And good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. This is Al Stefanelli, your host for BoqueteNOW Talk Radio, on Radio Cherokee 103.3 FM, sponsored by Big Daddy's Grill, Boulder 54, and the Tap Out Sport Zone. We have a fantastic show for you today. I have in the outdoor covered studio Sheila Strunk and Phil Bennett from the BCP Tuesday Market. We're going to give you a bunch of information on that. But before we do that, we need to go over, the latest from MINSA. And this is from their communication number 136, which was yesterday, and starts off with the national government fights COVID-19 through an interinstitutional effort as part of the strategy to combat COVID-19. The national government reinforces actions to strengthen the traceability system as one of the fundamental pillars against COVID-19. In this sense, this past Thursday, a tour was made to the Operations Center for Community Control and Traceability, as well as the Traceability Center in the metropolitan area, which was headed by the President of the Republic, Laurentino Cortizo, and the Minister of Health, Luis Sucre, and the Minister of Security, Juan Pino, and the Director of the CSS, along with a few other dignitaries. During the tour, the Minister of MINSA, Senor Sucre, explained how the operation with the other regions of the country is coordinated from that center. He explained that the objective is to use technology complemented by human resources to keep track of the contacts of a positive person and thus design actions to cut the chain of infections. He added that it seeks to trace positive cases to find their contacts and prevent the spread of the virus. The work is done on an interinstitutional team that is responsible for guaranteeing food, medicine, and the necessary sustenance for people so that they do not leave their homes. The traceability process starts from when the person is diagnosed positive after a test at MINSA or one of the CSS centers, and is followed as follows. The patient's data and contacts are taken. The needs survey is applied for household basics. After a study, food bags and other requirements are sent to your home. The health team contacts the person by telephone to follow up and thus comply with the traceability to cut the transmission chain of these people. So far, there are operations centers in San Miguelito, Panama East, Panama West Metro, and the provinces of Colón, Chiriquí, Herrera, and Los Santos. Unified purchases of medicines and supplies also came up. On Thursday, the President, Cortizio, with the Minister Sucre and Lau Cortez, the Director of the CSS, attended the meeting of the joint table that seeks to unify the purchase of medicines and supplies for both institutions of health. And the President stressed that there is an urgency in the country due to the COVID-19 situation, so there are Panamanians who depend on how agile and fast this interinstitutional purchasing team is. And Alicia Chu, I believe I pronounced that right, the head of the Biomedical Equipment Department of MINSA, maintained that the installation of this table for joint purchases also seeks to supply medical equipment and medicines to all public facilities. And finally, the national government is going to buy remdesivir, I can never pronounce that, remdesivir, I think that's how it's done. Minister Sucre informed that the decision has already been made, that for the moment the third block will not be opened. So I'm going to repeat that. The third block is not scheduled to be opened, and there is no date set for it to be opened. But they will wait until significant changes in the indicators are achieved. Now, when that decision is made, it will be phased in by economic and social lines. I think you might have heard that referred to as asymmetrical, which means they're going to look at the different provinces and districts and make decisions on what's going to open based on that. According to the epidemiological variables, you have to do what is necessary in order to save lives and the health of the population. So they are evaluating whether to be more drastic with the measures or to relax a little bit. And Sucre also announced that Panama will acquire the drug as remdesivir at the care of at least 1,000 patients with COVID-19. Yesterday there were 20,437 people who have recovered already from COVID-19. That's fantastic news. 965 new cases. A cumulative total of 42,216. There have been 2,457 tests done yesterday, as of close yesterday, and there's a positivity rate of 39%. 20 new deaths have been registered, totaling 839, and accumulated lethality of 1.98%. Excuse me, I don't have coronavirus, I just smoke too much. That 1.9% is in comparison to the worldwide rate of 4.6%. So I know it's frustrating having to deal with all of this, but we are way ahead of the curve as far as comparison to the national situation. Anyway, that's it for the medical news and the COVID news. We are going to turn our attention now to Sheila and Phil. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having us, Al.
It's nice to be here.
Well, you know, I've known you guys forever, man. We're going to be talking today about the BCP Tuesday market at the Feria, the fairgrounds. There's been a lot of questions on Facebook about, you know, when it's going to open, how it's going to be set up, and I know you guys have done a lot of posting and showing pictures, but yet, as we know how social media goes, things scroll by and the questions keep coming. We're also going to talk about the history of the market and a few other things. So let's start with Sheila. How you doing?
I'm great, Al. Thank you.
So, as we just actually discussed, or I talked about, there is no certain date for the opening, but you guys are getting everything ready and into place, correct?
Absolutely. We are signing up new vendors every day. We are working on laying out the space. The Feria is significantly larger than the spaces we've been in the past. It's about 12,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Great open, airy space, lots of windows, lots of lights. So there's a lot of opportunity to show some great merchandise there. We are working through the Mensa guidelines. Mm-hmm. They are quite specific. And we are working with our new market manager. We really haven't announced that yet, but
you heard it here first.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Do we have an exclusive?
You do.
Ooh.
Sort of. for an hour.
Okay.
Pilar Esquivel, who has been our market manager for the last 3 years, has always had a great interest in children and education. Mm-hmm. And actually shortly before the pandemic hit, Pilar was offered a wonderful opportunity to partner with a gentleman who creates educational software.
Wow.
And we're obviously extremely sad that she won't be coming back with us when we can reopen the market, but we're thrilled for her. This is her passion, and we wish her absolutely nothing
she's
but
great.
the best.
Pilar's fantastic. She has so much energy.
She does, and we have, with Pilar's help, hired a new market manager. Her name is Anda Miranda.
You heard it here first, guys.
You did. You'll be hearing from Anna in the next few weeks as she joins with us to continue working toward getting the market reopened. But we are thrilled to have her, and as I said, we just continue to work with the Mensa guidelines, and we're going to be ready as soon as we can open
when they let
with the approval of the government.
Now, I know, I don't know if it was you, Phil, or Sheila, mentioned something about, in the picture that's posted, there's no air circulation. As someone mentioned that they put fans in there. I think it was Phil. Yeah, let us know about that.
Yeah, that picture I think was taken shortly after they refurbished the room, which I think was about a year or more ago. They put in a drop ceiling, they put in extra lighting, they retiled it and redecorated. But that picture was taken before they actually put in ceiling fans, and from memory I think there's 6 or 8 ceiling fans in there. Plus all the way down the one side nearer the river, the windows open, so there's plenty of ventilation opportunities there. So yeah, it's going to be airy, light, and of course all undercover, which is a big plus.
No, we don't get any rain and wind here, though, so you know it should.
No, not on Tuesdays.
No, not at all.
It's never windy on a Tuesday, which has been very good news.
Yeah, and that, you know, if you haven't been, if you don't know what building they're talking about, if you've been to Oktoberfest, if you've been to the Flower Fair, if you've been to the Medical Fair, that's the building they're talking about. It's right on the corner, directly across from the entrance to where the BCP Theater is. And I guess parking will be addressed?
Sure. Yeah. We'll just put it out there. We all know that there is a new market that is being created in the space that we used to occupy across the street. They do have a parking lot. We will have a lot of on-street parking. We are negotiating with a property owner to be able to open their lot for parking.
Okay.
But we all need to keep in mind that when these markets open, we are still going to be under social distancing guidelines.
For a while.
For probably the foreseeable future,
yeah.
Unfortunately. That means that not only will we have to monitor the number of vendors that are in whatever space is available, but we're also going to have to monitor the number of patrons that come in the door at any given time.
Sure, yeah.
If you're only allowed to have so many patrons, then there is only a need for so many parking spaces. It's just
true.
logic.
That is true. Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna have 300 people in there at one time.
Exactly.
So, and we've been in there when it has been jam-packed, crowded. But following MINSA's guidelines, I guess you got to have someone at the door with the temperature and the feet thing and the hand. And I'm making these motions as if you all can see me. But the show is being recorded, though, and it'll be on YouTube, and I'll post all that later. But I have to remember just not to pick my nose or do anything funny. Anyway, yeah. So that's actually I hadn't thought about that. That's a good point. There is going to be a limited amount of people, so you're not going to have as much of the parking problem as that you would have people, because people have addressed that on social and Facebook.
Yeah. Absolutely, and it's a valid concern. Yeah. But we need to all look forward and realize that our lives are not going to be quite the same as this pandemic hopefully tapers off, and we are going to have to live with some restrictions for a while.
Well, even the vendors, I mean, the vendors, and I understand, all the vendors have to go through MINSA protocols and have to have the proper licensing, and I'm guessing at their individual booths, I guess they would be responsible for not having people all jumble up. But yeah, I think that that location of being indoors will offer something different.
I think as far as the social distancing is concerned, it can work out pretty well in the new location. There is one entrance, so we already have the items in place to be able to do the MINSA requirements at the entrance for checking people, stepping in disinfectant, everything like that.
And that's it's a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
We all see the the news, and we see how this is affecting everybody, and people are getting ill. There's a lot of older people here, myself included, that might be in a higher risk group.
I think I'm older than you.
I think maybe you are. But putting those protocols into place should ease everybody's mind a little bit about it's not going to be a free-for-all where everyone's going to be just running in and out.
Also, I mean, once you're inside, with that room, we have space for, I think we worked out at least 35, closer to 40, I think, 40 vendors in there with social distancing. So everybody can fit in there as far as the vendors are concerned. Plenty of space between tables. Probably a one-way system for people flow.
For the aisles,
so that people aren't bumping into each other. And it should work out very well, I think, from that point of view.
Now, you had mentioned that you've been signing up vendors. So can you give us an idea, no names, and I'm asking you for names, but what to expect as far as what might be offered, there as compared to, what it used to be?
Well, they're going to be very similar kinds of offerings. We have several coffee vendors that have already signed up, several produce vendors, artisan vendors, jewelry, food. It's a very similar mix of products. Some of the vendors will be new. We've obviously had some space limitations in the past. We couldn't invite more vendors. We've had vendors on a waiting list for quite some time. So now, although some of our previous vendors are staying at the old location, we have a great opportunity to sign up a lot of the vendors that have been waiting for quite some time.
And if someone has a space or requests a space at the market over there at the Feria, and they also want a location across the street, is that something that would be okay?
We're absolutely open to that.
We've got no problem.
Our market, the BCP Tuesday Market, is now and always has been a community service.
Right.
That includes the vendors. We are there for the vendors to be able to sell their products. And if it works out best for them to sell at both markets, good for them.
Yeah. Now, if you're new here, ladies and gentlemen, and you've only recently got here, well, as recent as you can. I don't think anyone's moved here since March, February, March. But if you are new here and you're not really sure, how the Tuesday Market came about, the history behind it, Phil is our, resident historian. It's a British thing, and respect, man, respect. So give us a rundown on how this all came to be.
Yeah, I've been finding out a lot more even in the last few weeks than I knew before, but it's been important to BCP to recognise the history, and for the history of BCP itself, we have a lot to thank quite a few people for, because they originally set up the BCP with a lot of work from volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
Dave and Erin Ross were possibly the main driving force behind that.
Wonderful people.
Yeah, although obviously there were a lot of other people involved. But the market came about originally because I think it was Diane Heidecker started doing talks at the Panamonti Hotel on a Tuesday morning. And a few people said, well, can we sell things there to the people that are coming in? So I said, well, why not? After a while, I'm not quite sure exactly when it happened, but it moved over to the Fundadores Hotel. It was there for a while. Then in 2009, it moved into the location by the riverside that we were in up until this year. And that's when it became really the BCP market. The foundation, the BCP Foundation, was formed. The theatre was put together by a whole bunch of volunteers, and the market then grew into the space that was available for it. As Sheila said, it's really outgrown that space, and certainly in the last year, we've had to turn away quite a few vendors. I don't have a number for how many, but we've always had a waiting list. And now what we see this to be is a logical evolution of the BCP Tuesday Market, is to move to somewhere bigger and better where we can accommodate as many people as are available.
Well, it sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that you mentioned the natural evolution, that with or without the pandemic, the market would eventually have to move to a larger location to accommodate more people. So I guess the pandemic kind of sped that up.
It did. It really prompted the action to take place. Although the beginning of it was actually just before the pandemic, when we were told that our lease would not be renewed in the old building, and the way the lease was going to be operated was changing, and we had a board meeting and looked at the options that were open to us, and it was not going to be financially viable for us to stay in the old building with the new lease, and really that's what prompted us to start looking at how to be bigger and better.
Sure.
And that was a long process because of the pandemic, because getting people together for meetings and everything
a little problematic there.
Was a little problematic, but eventually we got there, and now, as I say, we have this agreement with the Feria grounds, and it all looks good.
Good, and that's great information to have. And I wanted to ask about. I know that the BCP, as you know, I'm very familiar with, also operates the theater, correct?
Yes.
The Boquete Community Players, as it is. Now, I understand that aspect of the BCP is still going to remain in the theater at the old place. Is that correct?
To an extent, yes.
To an extent.
The theatre now comes under the lease of Tap Out.
Okay.
But we have an arrangement with Tap Out where BCP Productions will continue in the theatre, and very generously Justin from Tap Out agreed that we could use the theatre free of charge for BCP Productions.
Well, it's nice to see that there's cooperation, because you know how Facebook gets. Everyone's posting GIFs of people eating popcorn and thinking that there's going to be, but in reality, though, there's a symbiotic relationship there, to where everybody can get whatever they need and want done in an amicable way.
We think so, yeah.
Yeah.
We certainly hope so.
Yeah, I know all you guys, and I don't see it being, a giant row.
As you mentioned, Al, Facebook tends to spread a lot of potentially negative disinformation, misinformation, and we are very happy with the move. We're very happy to be able to continue to use the theater for BCP Productions, and we really appreciate that Justin gave us that opportunity.
Yeah, and as you all know, they were on the show last week, and this radio show is a public service, and it is very purposefully a positive oriented show. We don't do investigative journalism here. This is letting the community know what is available to them, what is good, what's positive, what's happening here, and that's becoming increasingly hard to do in this situation of our pandemic. Is people's nerves are on edge, and there's a lot of opinions out there, and I respect everybody's opinion, but we don't do that here. And it's really good to hear that you've got this agreement with Justin, and both markets are willing to have no restrictions on, hey, you can have a booth here, you can have a booth there. And I believe, Sheila, I think it was you who said there's plenty of room for everybody, and having a market day will just pretty much benefit everybody, and I know that it's easier to access the fairgrounds, and I could tell you that from the point of having mobility issues. So there's something for everybody, and I think that this is going to be a really, really good addition, to our community. Market Day.
Well,
right?
And one of the things we haven't mentioned yet today, I'm not sure whether Dee and Justin did last week, but there's a new artisan market that's opened up across the street from Tap Out.
I did not know that.
It's kind of right next to where Rico's Pizza Place is.
Okay.
Going toward the El Oasis, and so there's really a third market option that's available there. We don't really know much about their structure or their cost or how many vendors they've signed up, but it's going to be there.
I think they were a bit unfortunate because they finished putting it all together right at the end of February.
I know.
And I don't think anyone ever actually opened up there with one of their stalls. They have very nice wooden stands built in there, so it would be a great place for an artisan to be.
Yeah, it would.
But we have no idea what's going to actually be in there, or
Or
like
when.
everything else, when.
Yeah. There's been again, this is just people suggesting things, that if somehow they were to, I guess parking being the main obstacle, but close off the bridge and that other road back there and just have it a pedestrian for that one day. We're just yeah, I know I'm getting, but I'm just, I am basically looking at what people are saying and ideas that have been put out, and that has come up more than once, just to have it a pedestrian area.
Let me put it this way, and we're on radio, so I'll be polite about it.
Okay.
We have found in the past that when there have been major events happening in town, and the police have closed that bridge to road traffic, which has happened on a few occasions on a Tuesday, that very few people actually turn up to the market on those days because they're used to being able to drive in.
Down, yeah.
There are people with mobility issues who can't walk across the bridge, but I think they would make arrangements for that normally. But we have observed over the last few years that closing that bridge doesn't help.
Well, there you go. The handful of you who have asked that question, there's your answer. It's logistically not optimal.
For those of us that are over 60, I'll be generous. Many of us are very mobile and we like to get out and walk and exercise and do those kinds of things, but we do have a percentage of our population. In addition to which, we have to think about the vendors.
Right.
The vendors are bringing truckloads of merchandise to, all of our markets, and they need to be able to get in and offload that merchandise, and closing off the bridge will not help.
No.
Yeah, I think it's actually something there that's very important to point out is that in the new building at the Ferrier, everything is on one level.
Right.
They will be able to unload their merchandise at the door. We will have people helping them get the stuff in. No steps to go down. No slippery slopes to navigate, and it should be a lot easier for people. And we know that quite a few of the vendors have really struggled in the past with the steps. There've been a few who have gone around the back way and come in on the same level behind the theatre, but you can only get a couple of people in there at a time.
Oh yeah, it's a tight spot.
So that's going to be a big plus for the vendors, I think, being able to just work on one level.
You smell something burning?
Yeah, it's not my microphone, I can tell you that.
No, I'm not on fire, but stay tuned, folks. We're very interested.
It smells like electrical fire.
Doesn't it though?
It does.
I'm looking around to see if I'm on fire.
Yeah.
But no, that's. I'm glad you pointed that out because one of the issues that I understand, and I know several of the vendors, that have bulky items. Big boxes and setups and displays that are difficult to get in and out of anywhere, really.
Right.
And this is not a dig against the tap out. The way it's set up's the way it's set up. I did want to find out, and a few people have asked, let's look at the way the building is set up. You said there's one entrance, okay. In the past, at the other market, I've noticed that sometimes when I've gotten there very early, I'll get there a quarter to 8 o'clock. There are still vendors offloading and loading, along with the patrons, the customers being there, and that has caused a bit of a bottleneck, and it has caused sometimes the aisles being blocked while people are setting up. So is there going to be a separate time, but totally like you have to be in and set up and out by opening? Just asking.
Okay. Well, let me explain it this way. We've always had that rule.
Okay. I kind of
we've always asked the vendors to come and be set up by 8:30 in the morning. The market officially opened at 9 when we were in the other building. It will be the same in our new location. There are always challenges.
Sure.
We have some vendors that come from Dolega or farther toward David.
Volcan,
yeah, I know a couple of them that come from.
Traffic can be an issue. Some of our Panamanian, Venezuelan, Argentinian vendors don't have cars,
right.
So they're hiring taxis, which don't always get there right on time. So yes, it's always been a little bit of a challenge to have everybody set up and ready to go, and to not have patrons coming in before 9 o'clock. It's likely to continue that way, much as I'd like to say it would change. I don't think either market really is going to have a lot of control over.
Well, yeah, I mean, you bring up obvious taxis. I have called taxis in the past, and I've waited like we all do, and that's not necessarily because the taxi drivers are lazy. They have schedules, and maybe they had to take someone further than they thought. So, yeah, okay. I just that's again something else that people have asked and that I've noticed.
We would have the option in the new building, obviously, to close the doors and not let patrons in before 9 o'clock, but we certainly don't want to discourage anybody
No,
from
it
coming
That would
in.
work out well.
No. Well, finding a balance in anything is,
Right.
is important. So, we definitely understand that. And one thing that I don't know whether you know about, you have any input on this or not, but last week we were talking to, as you know, Justin and Dee, and there was a question as to whether the description of the market was going to allow it to open either later or earlier based on how the city market is classified. They've been open all along with grocery stores because they sell,
Right, the produce.
and that came up last week, and I hadn't heard anything back yet, excuse me, on that. I don't know if you have, or what your input is on that, or is that something that is being considered?
I think you perhaps hinted at that in the introduction to the program, where you were talking about the groups opening and maybe asymmetric opening. We are keeping in touch with Minsa about just what is possible, and if they decide that certain activities, like a market, an indoor market, can open, then we're ready for it. If they decide this week, maybe that's pushing it a bit. It's Friday, isn't it? Yeah. I actually haven't known which day it is this week.
I never know.
I nearly came yesterday.
I asked my wife, what day is it? She said the 23rd. No, what day is it?
But yeah, none of us actually know what's going to happen, but yes, it's possible, and we have everything in place where we would be able to open very quickly if we were given the agreement to do so.
Now, is it the vendors, if they have their own their own tables and chairs, if they don't, is that something that is also going to be supplied like in the past?
Yeah, we've always supplied tables to the majority of vendors. We still will. Some vendors have brought their own tables. That's fine, they can still do so. But we have tables to supply. Yeah.
And going back to just a second ago, the only reason why I asked about that classification of what the market is under the Minsa rules, I've got some friends of mine out in Panama City before they rolled back their stuff, and they're in markets. There's these vendor markets everywhere.
Right.
And the issue that they had faced was, again, this is before they re-locked down Panama City and Panama West, was that the only vendors that they allowed in their market were the ones that sold food. The vendors that had jewelry and knickknacks and whatever weren't allowed in because they weren't categorized as being a food vendor. And I'm wondering, if a situation like that happens, obviously, we don't want to discourage non-food vendors, but would the market open up to take advantage of that with just the food for now and then adding the other vendors later?
It's something that we absolutely would consider. It's very confusing, I think, for all of us to follow some of these regulations. I mean, I went down to City Mall earlier this week.
Yeah.
And certainly their first floor is primarily groceries, but all three floors are open, selling other things.
Yeah. See, and that's
so that's one of the things that's very confusing. That with our market, we may be able to open only with produce and food vendors, but City Mall can open and sell clothing and sporting goods.
It's the same situation with the city market.
Right.
There's other vendors in there that don't sell food, and there are vendors that have food products along with
other things. And
I know we would all really love to have some very clear, precise instructions, but things are changing so rapidly. It's hard to keep up with, and we all are here in town. Everybody's looking for things to kind of return to a sense of normality, but on the other hand, everyone's kind of worried now that we've got some new cases here. It's kind of a balancing act, but we're all looking for things to open, and we're all looking for ways to spend our money and to get out and socialize within the parameters. Throw a handshake at somebody from across the room. And one of the staples that has been in town here is the market. and everyone's kind of anxious. You know, when is the market opening? And you should see my PMs. I get hundreds of them every day, and a lot of them revolve around when is this going to open? When is that going to open? And there's a significant number of them that are asking about the markets. And everyone's, you know, itching to get out there and do things, and I know it's frustrating. It's got to be frustrating for you guys having everything in place and being ready to go, and just having to sit and wait.
Well, yeah, I promise we're as anxious as anybody else to get the market open again. It's certainly one of the services BCP has provided to this community for 14 years or more, and we're really anxious to get it started again. You've probably seen that we've tried to continue our mail service through this pandemic.
Gringo Express.
And the cast and crew of Blythe Spirit, which was just getting ready to open as the pandemic hit, are keeping up with their scripts and their lines, and they're very anxious to get the performance ready to go again as soon as we can. All of these things are just hanging in the air, and I think we were all really, really disappointed back in June when Phase 3 was scheduled to open, and then it got shut down again, and that certainly added to everybody's angst about getting back to normal life. MNCE's regulations are quite detailed. We are trying to be very careful to follow those regulations. Everybody has to be inspected before they're allowed to open, and that has to get scheduled. As you can imagine, there are not a huge number of MNCE inspectors in David and Boquete, so
they're kind of busy.
Timing is a bit of an issue.
Well, I did want to ask you, and this is not a market-related question, but it is a BCP-related question. You know, you'd mentioned the generosity of Justin and using the theater. There's 100 seats in that theater. When it comes time to be able to resume production, we all love the plays. You know, the music shows. I mean, I've been in a couple of them. They're wonderful. They're a lot of fun, and they kind of take your mind off of anything that's going on. You sit there and watch a play. Has any thought been put into how that is going to, how are you going to do that? You got 100 seats in there, it's a closed room, ventilation and all that. We want to know, we want the plays back, man.
That's a great question, Al, as I always say on radio. Yes, I'm glad you asked that question. No, obviously we have thought about this, and yes, there are 100 seats, and no, we will not be able to use all of them. We are waiting for Minster to tell us how many seats we could use. It's probably not going to be more than 30 seats that we would be allowed to occupy, maybe only 25. Then of course the question comes up of would the cast of Blythe Spirit like to do 16 shows instead of 4? Would the people in the upcoming music show want to do that many shows? You know, well, you've been in the music shows. I think the answer is no.
No, but 3 or 4 of them was enough.
3 or 4 is enough. Yeah, but whatever the rules are, we will obey them, obviously, and we will obey them rigorously. You know, there's no point in squeezing in 2 extra people and then
it's not worth it.
You're going to get closed down for the next 6 months.
Well, and certainly with Blythe Spirit, we've already spent the money to build the set, and the theater's ready to go for Blythe Spirit, so we'll obviously be doing that in the theater. But there are other venues in this town that we may also consider. We're trying to think out of the box, be creative, look at what else we can do and where else we might be able to do it, so that we can fit more people in for one performance and not have to have 16 performances.
I mean, the theater's it's great. I love that theater. You know, I mean, it's for me as one who has been involved in a couple of shows, it's got a certain charm to it. You know, the backstage area, we've had a lot of jokes back there and a lot of fun, and a lot of times the producer coming back and they're telling us to shut up because we're being too loud. But yeah, I do see, you know, to where that to a large extent, you know, that would have to change, and this is just me personally. You know, this is not based on anything that Facebook said or anyone on Facebook said, but the fairgrounds building has a stage.
It does indeed.
You know, and I'm thinking to myself, just as like I said, this is nothing official, but there's got to be a way to put, seating in there. And because the drop ceiling, I know the biggest challenge I've had playing music there in the past was like being in an upside down bathtub or in a plane hangar. There isn't a sound man alive that was able to make that sound good. It wasn't designed for
You
that.
haven't tried me yet.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah,
Phil has a cape, by the way, that has, sound man on the back. The S on his chest is not for Superman, it's for sound man.
It actually says sound thing, not
Sound
sound
thing.
man. Yeah.
But I know with the drop ceiling, it's probably acoustically a little better. And like you said, Sheila, there's a lot of different venues, around town. But
We have some incredibly talented and creative directors in this town.
yes.
And, we have talked over the years about various ways to put on productions and performances that, may not require a big set and a big stage. And, there might be some outdoor venues that would be fabulous during dry season.
During dry season.
Yes,
probably
yes.
not in August.
Probably not, no.
Certainly during dry season, and that's also our tourist season here in Boquete. So we think there are just a lot of great opportunities in this town, and as long as our population supports the services and productions that we provide, we're going to keep on doing it.
I think it's important to know that BCP is more than just a building, more than just a theatre.
Right.
It's a community, and
Well, that's what the C stands for.
Yeah, that's what the C stands for. It's Boquete Community Playhouse. It's even on the Ferrier ground. There's actually at least 3 possible venues to have something on stage in a room or an outdoor area that could be quite useful for probably music productions.
Sure.
So there's a few options there we're looking at. Plus, as Sheila said, there's other places around town for smaller or larger operations. So we're looking at a lot of different places.
So basically, you guys haven't been just sitting around during this pandemic and doing that. It sounds like you've been doing a lot of planning and a lot of, but not just in the market, but in the other areas of the BCP.
It's been non-stop, really. In a few ways, the lockdown was helpful because we were able to spend more time on the phone, on the internet, and on emails and such like, and concentrate on that without thinking, oh, I got to go shopping. Oh, I can't go shopping.
I gotta find something else.
So we've been very busy on that and talking to some new people who want to get involved in productions as well. And a lot of people, old and new, are very interested, as Sheila hinted at just now, in like a minimalist type of theatre. Very little set, probably just a few props being carried on and off, and maybe just 1 or 2 people on stage talking. There's lots of options out there.
Yeah, I've been to a few of those productions. Obviously not here in Panama, but having grown up in New York City, you don't always have $200 or $300 for a Broadway ticket. Fortunately, in the area of that they call the Great White Way, there's a lot of off-Broadway, off-Broadway, and off-Broadway.
And nowhere near Broadway.
Yeah, and I lived in that area for many years, and these little playhouses, maybe 20 or 30 seats. They'd have these little productions where it was 1 or 2 people, maybe 3 people, and a few of them there wasn't even a set change, and they were really enjoyable. You sit there and you just watch, the performers, and just sit back and enjoy it. So yeah, I could see how that would be a good way to adjust to our new normal, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, it's actually something BCP has done in the past, which is kind of fun and exciting. When we first moved here 5 years ago, the BCP was one of the things that really attracted us. I had not done theater since college, and thought, well, I'm going to be retired. I'm not going to have anything to do.
How's that retirement thing working?
Yeah, not working that way for me, but I thought, well, maybe I can get back into it. I'll do stagehand work and crew, and my neighbor at the time sort of dared me to come and audition with her for a play that was actually 3 one-act plays put together. And she and I did go and audition. We were both offered parts. My neighbor turned it down because she had another commitment, and I ended up acting in this play, you know, for the first time in 45 years or something. Each act had one prop on the stage. The black curtains were behind us. The scene that I was doing was taking place in a bookshop. So there was just a counter with the clerk behind the counter. That was it.
Wow.
The second act was 2 chairs and 2 actors. The third act was a suitcase.
Wow.
So those, and it was great. Barbara Fiorucci, who directed, did a fabulous
Shout
job.
out to Barbara. She's
Shout
on
out to
Monday at 10
Barbara.
o'clock on her show with Cynthia, by the way.
Yes.
Right here.
And it was an incredible experience. We are always looking for more people who want to act, who want to help us off stage. We are a volunteer organization. Nobody gets paid. But all of these things we do for love of this community. And we want to keep doing that.
And this is what we call in radio a master segue. So you've been here for 5 years and you got involved with the theater because it appealed to you. At what point did you get involved with the market? That's the segue, everybody. Everything work, and you know I think that's the what really marks a success of anything is, does it work, and does it work seamlessly? And I know nothing is perfect. There's always going to be problems. There's always going to be late taxis, you know, vendors blocking the doorway, a speaker's not working, something happening, the mixer blows up, the lights don't work. There's always something. Even in radio, I've been in the middle of an interview with people and all of a sudden the power goes out, and 2 minutes later we're back on with the cell phone and WhatsApp and I'm passing it around. So there's always going to be problems, but you know, the work that goes on behind the scenes, especially with a farmer's market or a city or a market, to be able to just get there, park, walk in, you know, buy your things, have it a smooth process. I think from a consumer's point of view is a success. If you can do that, is a success.
I think we have a lot of experience now with running a market.
I think so.
I was actually involved with a market before I came to Boquete 4 years ago. On the island of Bonaire. There was a cruise ship market. So I was involved there. Since I've been involved here, so we have a good team. We have a team who understands the needs of the market. We understand what's necessary to get things to happen smoothly, and we have people working with us who have been working with us for a couple of years now. People like the guy in the car park.
I'm telling you, I don't know what's his name. Gerardo, you get props, because I would know. 5 minutes later, I'd be like, you know what, park wherever you want. I'm going to go home. And he's a good. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and you know, we're going to need a bigger team at the new place. I think with all the regulations, you need a bigger team anyway.
Yeah.
But we'll have people, as I said earlier, helping the vendors to unload quickly so they can move away from the entrance. You know, we'll have people helping them set up inside the hall, and yeah, we have the experience to make sure it happens smoothly.
Yeah, and really, you know, the fact that the city has done some work on the road over there. Because I remember at the Oktoberfest, I felt so bad for this guy. He backed his SUV up to the door to unload something, and I guess when he unloaded it changed the position of the car, and he pulled out, and his whole rear bumper just ripped off. And then right after that, someone pulled in a little car like yours, and the front bumper came off. But now, it's and because I know you mentioned one entrance and all on one floor. The road around that area is 1,000% better than it was a year ago.
Yeah, they've definitely made huge improvements in the road and along the sides of the road. So it'll be very easy for people to get in and out, both vendors and our patrons. And I wanted to mention, Phil talked a lot about, the vendors and the ease of getting into the space and the size of the space. But one of the joys of the BCP Tuesday Market has also been the socializing that goes on. And that's something that's very important to us, that people can come. I know, even though I'm out and about most days and in town and meeting people and doing volunteer work, we have a lot of friends and a lot of fellow Boquetenians who stay home a lot more than I tend to. And that's great. People enjoy that. They enjoy their gardens and their homes, but they come to the market to see people.
Yeah.
It's a once a week social event.
Yeah, and you know what? That the last time I was at the market, and I hadn't been for a couple of months, but I have friends that had were vendors there, and they say, "Hey, you come down, buy my blah blah blah, say hello." I get to the market. Now this person I'm talking about is all the way in the back, and it literally took me almost a half an hour to get from the front, because here's all these people that I haven't seen in a long time, vendors that I didn't even know were vendors, friends of mine, and it was really good to see everybody. I hadn't seen them in a while. I haven't been playing music around town for a while, and that was how I, said hello to people. So I go to the market, I'm like, wow, everybody's here. And like I said, it literally took me 30 minutes to get from the bottom of the stairs to the back of the building, and it was fantastic. I went home and I told Dad, I said, who I saw at the market, blah, 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 how were they doing? And it was a conversation for the rest of the day. So my hour at the market was now it was a day-long, hey, this is great, I saw this person. I said, yeah, so it definitely is a meeting place.
Well, and it's one of the reasons we're just so excited about the new space is that people will have the opportunity to do that, but not block the vendor stalls.
But no hugging. No hugging,
Man,
unless they allow it.
Phase is open at the top.
If it's allowed, okay. We don't want to get anyone.
We can hug next year.
Yeah, next year will be
I'll
2021. Will be the year of the hug.
Maybe we'll set up a little elbow bump corner or something.
How about a booth just for elbow, like a photo booth where you can pull the curtain and no one can see what you're doing in there.
It's funny because I actually saw a video on Facebook yesterday or the day before of some woman back in the States who set up a hugging station.
Seriously?
In a market, yeah, and it was like drop your dollar and get a hug.
Oh wow!
There was the one. Was that the one with the curtain that you hugged? Actually,
no, I saw that one too. It was like a shower curtain that you put your hands through.
Well, you know what they say: necessity is the mother of invention.
Absolutely.
Well, we're getting close to being done with the show. So before we get there, is there anything that you specifically wanted to touch on again? Was there anything that you wanted to point out? We got a few minutes.
There's just one thing that occurred to me when we were talking just now about the one entrance is that probably by now someone has posted on Facebook saying, "Oh, there's only one way in and out. It's going to be a fire trap."
No.
There isn't only one way in and out. There are other exits. So,
yes, there are.
I just want to make that clear.
And if you get set on fire, you can just run right out that back door and jump in the river.
And jump in the river, absolutely, yes, yeah. Fire extinguishers will be provided.
Namely the river. But no, seriously, I know that you guys have been really planning this for a while, and I know that you're trying to take every contingency into account to make sure that when it does come time to open it, it will be smooth and it will be an enjoyable experience for everybody.
Yeah, we'll be ready.
So what I'm going to do, like I do with every show, when I'm done, I'm going to post a post-show promo. Well, I'll have links and all information, so whatever you want to get out there, I'll put out there. My promos hit about 30,000 people, so we'll get it out there and let everybody know.
Great.
I know that we don't know yet when whatever block you guys end up being in is going to happen, but it's nice to know that you and other people in this community are preparing, for the eventual whatever is going to be considered normal again.
Yeah,
and
I remember normal.
I remember normal too. Wow. But we are at a different time. What a time to be alive, right? We're all looking forward to visiting the market and to seeing our friends, and trying to recognize who they are under masks, which don't get me wrong, that has happened to me. Hey Al,
Yeah.
hi.
Every day.
I don't know who you are. You have a hat on, you have a mask on.
Well, and you have hair now.
And I have hair now, I know. All right, we are just about done. It is 10:59, 11 o'clock. We have another show coming up here, so I want to thank Phil Bennett, Sheila Strunk from the BCP Tuesday Market. It has been a very informative show. I want to thank you very much for your time. You've been listening to BoqueteNOW on Radio Cherokee 103.3 FM, sponsored by Big Daddy's Grill, Boulder 54, and the Tap Out Sports Zone. I wish everyone a wonderful day, and we will see you next week.